What I've said to the board and said to the executive leadership team here is this is not a destination, right? We're not going to just finish this. And this exciting world that we live in, it's just a journey we're on. So just hold on to your hats. It's going to get faster and it's going to get more exciting maybe, but we've swung hammers the same way we did 40 years ago. That may in fact change in 10 years. Like the world is really changing.
Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. My guest today is Dolores Mears. Dolores is the Chief Information Officer of Hensel Phelps, an 87-year-old, roughly $7 billion revenue general contractor providing development, construction, and facility services. Dolores has been in her role for 4 years, and she's led the company through a journey of modernization, digitization, and innovation. I look forward to learning more about the methods she's used through this conversation. Prior to joining Hensel Phelps, Dolores was the Chief Information Officer of CRH. Dolores, welcome to Technovation. It's great to speak with you today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's a great pleasure. Well, why don't we begin with Hensel Phelps business? For those who may be less familiar with it, walk us through what it is that your company does.
So Hensel Phelps has been in business, as you mentioned, for 87 years. We do design build or just build. About 50% of our business is federal or government assisted, funded, or even Department of Defense work. We are number one in airports. We build stuff that's complicated. So we build airports. You've probably flown through a lot of the airports that we've either done business in, or if you've flown through LAX, we're doing a couple $2 billion in support of the Olympics coming. We also do hospitals. We do big data centers. We do satellite testing facilities, lots of other stuff for the government that we can't tell you about. But yeah, the complicated stuff, and it's pretty fantastic.
Phenomenal. And tell us a little bit about your role as Chief Information Officer. What's within your span of responsibilities?
So within my span of responsibilities is everything pertaining to technology, whether it's the CISO role. I'm responsible for cybersecurity. I have a director of cybersecurity that's outstanding, or a chief technology officer. So driving the AI council, ensuring that I sit on the board of some investments for some diverge or emerging market technologies that we have coming out. So the suite of technology is within my purview.
Fascinating to learn more about the breadth of your responsibilities. Well, I mentioned at the outset that, as you've mentioned to me in past conversations, that you've been leading the organization through a journey of modernization. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what that's entailed. Where have you focused? Where has your team focused in helping the organization modernize the way in which it does business?
Yeah, great question. Interestingly enough, when I walked into Hensel Phelps 4 years ago, we have a lot of documented operating procedures where most companies do things, but it's very ad hoc and they might do them differently across the regions. We had over 800 documented operating procedures that were available online, but none of it was digitized. There was no enterprise data warehouse. There was no connectivity or integration between systems. It was really a very siloed manual systems of processes that was taking place. So when they hired me, the board very quickly set out some things for us to go do. The first was to really mature the organization, get the organizational design in place so that we could support the organization going forward. The second thing that we did was establish a data strategy and put in a modern data platform. So we started to not only house our information in data lakes and data vaults and things that you would traditionally do, but really injected a lot of the integrations that we needed and digitized a lot of those forms and systems and processes that we have. So what we used to call the measles chart, which is when something would happen or you would transfer an employee, you had to go to all these different places and none of it was connected, was now beautifully connected as we could see through the systems. That really gave us a great position for all of this AI and very exciting technology advancements that are happening. We've been able to do a lot of work around predictive models and machine learning and other AI much more quickly because we put that foundation in place for the first 2 years and really have been on that journey. What I've said to the executive leadership team here is this is not a destination, right? We're not going to just finish this. And this exciting world that we live in, it's just a journey we're on. So just hold on to your hats, right? It's going to get faster and it's going to get more exciting maybe, but we've swung hammers the same way we did 40 years ago. That may in fact change in 10 years. Like the world is really changing, but we're in a great position because we started that modernization journey about 4 years ago.
And you mentioned at the outset that you chair an AI council, and you just referenced again that AI is an area of focus. Can you talk a bit about the constitution of the AI council and some of the areas that you're exploring from an innovation perspective, leveraging artificial intelligence?
Yeah, absolutely. So the AI Council itself is set up to ensure that we are responsibly applying those advanced technologies. And so what we've done is we've created a method to be able to pull in any and all requests for software technology usage on the project site or the project sites themselves, or within our corporation or at the regional position. And we take them through a series of gates, and it starts with business value, because like everything, and like you mentioned in your book, right, your IT strategy, your AI strategy, everything should be rooted in support of that business strategy. Where are you going? What's that vision? And so our board set a 2037 vision, which is the year we turn 100. And that vision is really underpinned by the use of advanced technologies in everything. And so having that council be able to first gate that with, is there business value? And then secondly, there's a lot of emerging markets in construction. There's been a lot of VC influx. And because of that, we really want to make sure we have solvency or a good review of the company that we're about to do a pilot with or a demo or something else. And so then there's that review. And then we go into the model and the actual technology review, and then a cyber review and privacy review, and then ultimately a legal review. So what we've done is we've constructed a method to be able to establish our guiding principles as an AI council, ensure that the technologies that are being requested can go through those filters, come out, and then get supported. And then we have pilot success criteria and things we're going to go back and make sure that those are actually meeting the needs of the business and delivering the value that we want. What I will tell you is that it's a lot like flying a ship and trying to fix it while you're doing it. There's just so much out there. And we just got off the call with marketing today who's like, oh, we want to use this one and this one and this one. And there's a CRM sales one, and there's this Copilot, and there's a chat GPT that we can create for ourselves. And you're like, okay, hold tight, right? Here's the world you can play in because this is approved, and here's the world you can't. I would suggest you prioritize that and then get it through this council. So by nature of the council, we are constraining innovation a bit, but we're trying to do that so we can be responsible. The recent regulations that have come out in California and Colorado have really complicated that, right? So we are also seeing prime contracts from our owners, and I had one pass my desk yesterday that absolutely locks down what you can and cannot use, to the extent of what we can even use internally in our own productivity gains or our own safety methods. So I think as the world is trying to figure all this stuff out, the construct that we've built in this AI council to put some friction in that process is actually a good one. Yeah. I know that's a long answer, but
But
there's a
no,
lot.
a fruitful one as well, Dolores. I appreciate that overview. I want to also return to the point you raised about the investments in emerging markets and innovative companies. Talk a bit about that role and the way in which you, the filters you use to determine when to invest and what to invest in.
Yeah. So we have a gentleman by the name of Ty Nguyen, and Ty is our director of innovation, and he's out there really engaging with those different VCs and the different emerging companies that are coming through, and the teams are really pumping everything through him. The truth is we have hundreds. So there are hundreds of different opportunities that are coming through. And the way that we sift through those is first Ty's team takes a look at them and says, does it make sense, right? And if it does make sense, then they go out to the market or they go out to the project sites, and they may test that concept and say, hey, conceptually, if you use this, would it help, right? And it's a little like we're being handed a lot of hammers and we're looking for a nail, right? So that's one way that we engage. And we have invested in some solutions that we think are really viable, right? And so if we're going to put our sweat equity into helping those emerging companies and those technologies be successful, then we want to reap some reward out of that. So there's that element. The second is, quite frankly, the people on the ground who see a problem and then try to solve the problem. So they might have developed something in Google, or they might have developed something in a Power Platform, or they might have worked with a vendor to develop something. And now they're bringing it to Ty and myself and saying, hey, I've got this great technology. I think we should roll it out across the country. So it's both coming from inside and outside. But we do have a particular head of innovation, and he's doing a great job keeping a pulse on all those pieces. Really tough, though. Like I said, there are several hundred that are being looked at, and 15, I would say, have really good potential for us.
Very interesting. Well, needless to say, just with all you've described so far, a lot of change that you've helped usher
Yeah.
in within the organization. And I know from our past conversations, the importance of enterprise change management as
Yes.
a set of capabilities, a function to be able to ensure that the organization is digesting all of the change and
Yes.
ultimately taking advantage of it as well. Can you talk a bit about your perspective there and again, some of
Yeah.
the methods you've used?
Yeah. I'd like to tell the story of how we got there, actually.
Please.
So what happened is when we came in and we started the modernization journey, right? The board would come back and say, some of these projects went well, and some of them really didn't go well, and so you go, okay, and then we try to do the next one, right? And by the time we got into about 18 months, it became obvious to me that we really needed some structured enterprise change management. And so I started to have conversations with the board and educate, because prior to that, a lot of what we did was done regionally. And so because of that decentralization, there wasn't a corporate structure for enterprise change at all, nor really an understanding conceptually of what that meant or how we could do it. And so we got together about a year and a half ago, and put together our own enterprise change management process. And when we did, we decided we were going to, base it off of ADCAR and some other really well-known models, right, that are great, but do it in a way that made sense for us. And so that change management process now has a lot of the C-suite sitting on it. So the chief people officer, the chief administrative officer, the chief finance officer, our company president, myself, and we really talk about not just the rollout of something. Because while that's interesting and relevant, so we can do it successfully, the workforce change that is happening is a lot of the conversation. It's much more strategic. How do we guide people through? How do we teach this set of folks how to get through that change? Because we've been highly successful doing work the way we've done it for many, many, many decades. And so getting those people to come along in that change management is critical. And honestly, it's really hard, because that rubber band stretch of your early adopters and the people that are really great about it and have a natural inclination to technology or change, and the folks that don't, I think is getting tighter, like tighter in the rubber band, but stretched further in their differences. And I think that's going to be a challenge for a lot of companies, certainly
Yes.
one for us.
Super interesting. Yeah, I appreciate those perspectives as well. You mentioned at the outset that yours is an organization that takes on some of the most complex projects, airports,
Mhm.
hospitals, data centers, you named a few others as well.
Yeah.
And I wonder how you see technology playing a role in simplifying some of that complexity. I mean, certainly
Mhm.
some of the ways you've
Oh,
already described, but
it's a great
other
question.
things that excite you in terms of your team's ability to help in that way.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great question, and I have a great example. So a gentleman by the name of David Latier, who's our head of AI and solutions architecture, David just put together a prototype to take our specifications documentation from an owner and compare it with other types of information that we may have. Like there may be another document that refers to millwork, another document that refers to other types of the trade, steelwork, within that same project. And there may be different drawings and things like that. His takes all of that, outputs an Excel spreadsheet that has every single specification that's listed and all the collisions that are listed. So where that specification collides with a different specification and is not in alignment, that the team says is going to save hundreds of hours of work. And David built the prototype in 2 days, I think. Like the speed at which we can try to put something to start to solve a problem, and then it becomes a RAG model and fine tuning, not a creation. The power in that is fantastic, right? Our ability to build better quality because we recognize those collisions early is phenomenal. So that's just one example. There are many. Yeah.
That's great. Talk a bit about the way in which you thought about upskilling your team as well. I mean, so
Ah,
some of what you've described is also fundamentally new, and needless to
yeah.
say, new skills are necessary in those ways. Either bringing
Yeah.
people in from the outside that have them, but perhaps also training existing employees to get
Yeah.
involved in new areas. How do you think about that?
Yeah, and I think I think about it a lot, and I think it's really hard, right? So first and foremost, we're doing some internal education, both for the management team and IT, but also the development team, for example, spends every week some time looking at GitHub and how people are using it and really sharing those examples. GitHub, as an example, is estimated to actually double their productivity in the next 12 months. It's massively impactful. We are struggling with training people on tuning models and what vector creation is and feature creation. We're actually struggling with that a bit. And so we've looked at some tools to be able to utilize. I've been looking at some of the resources, like Cornell University offers an online course in AI, and Harvard, I noticed, offers a course. And I think UNC in North Carolina is offering courses. I think that we're going to need to look at this in a much more structured way. So right now it's more organically within our team, but there's so much moving so fast that we need to bring up the level of everyone along the way. Honestly, it's still a problem that we need to solve. Yeah.
Very interesting. Well, as you mentioned at the outset, yours is a role that in some ways it's called Chief Information Officer, but it also incorporates aspects of the CISO and CTO roles that in some organizations have broken out into separate segments. And the extent to which you clearly, through so much of what we've already spoken about, have an eye towards innovation, which of course involves to some extent risk taking if you're not taking some risks and you're not innovating truly, but also cybersecurity, which is about risk mitigation. I wonder how you think about the balance between those and making sure that you're not over rotating in one direction or another in ways that might have some, problematic consequences. How do you think about that balance?
Yeah, our director of cybersecurity actually sits on the AI Council. So how I think about that balance is enabling our legal department and our director of cyber to sit on that council and have a strong voice as I do. So for me, I'm a real collaborative leader. I don't like making really tough decisions in a silo, right? Can I? Yes. Do I want to? Absolutely not. And so that's the way that I'm doing it is I'm encouraging those voices to be heard and, quite frankly, to be loud, right? And so I've said to Dustin, if you've got an issue and you think this risk is high, I need you to stand on my desk and tell me this risk is high, because I'm going to make a business decision otherwise. And if you think it's going to put us at risk, part of what's great about our business is because we are a DoD or a federal contractor, we have particular specifications of the level of security that we have to maintain. So there's already a minimum standard. And then, quite frankly, our corporate values are very strong. So then we have a corporate value standard. So while I do want to take risk and innovation and I do want to push it, like I said, I want to have those voices that are making sure we do that in the right way. Responsibly is the most important thing. Yeah.
Makes sense. I like that. Yours is an employee-owned company, and I wonder, having worked in a variety of different constructs in terms of the enterprises you've been a part of, what are some of the differences or nuances in working in an employee-owned company?
Yeah, great question. The first is the sense of ownership. So you can walk around and it doesn't matter if there's something on the ground or you're trying to solve a complex problem. You have a lot of people around you that have extremely high levels of ownership. And very rarely, if ever, do you see personal progression of career or personal needs or wants actually trumping the corporation's needs, the bigger organism's needs. It is the politics here, if you look at politics at a scale, are really low. And the confidence that the team has in the board and the executive decisions that are made is really high. It's an incredible thing where you don't have to align 150 people to get a decision made. You really need to make a good case to the folks that you know are critically important and the board will make decisions, and then you can move forward. So the speed at which that decision-making can be made is much, much easier, faster. That sense of ownership is really high. Now, interesting that that's coupled with that change management challenge that I talked about earlier, bringing the workforce along. So it's an interesting environment, and it's not the easiest, but it certainly is very different and quite enjoyable. Yeah. The other thing is, a lot of people here, our average tenure is like 16 or 17 years. A lot of people here grew up in this business. They've been in the business for 30 years. I've been in construction for 14 and I'm a baby in it. That sense is, there's a lot of respect that is within the halls and within the job sites, right? People really respect each other. They really care for each other. And that sense is strong in such a big company.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to ask you also, we've talked about a number of trends that are of consequence to an organization like yours. Any that we've not covered that you were particularly excited about as you look to the future?
Yeah, I am extremely excited about augmented reality. So the ability to take a 3D drawing or even a 2D drawing, but preferably a 3D drawing, get it in front of you, right, on goggles or something else, and being able to see the as built. In a hospital, for example, and the manufacturing facility. So we build chip manufacturing facilities. The tolerance is extremely, extremely small. And if a trade inputs a pipe and it's off by an inch or 2 inches, it could cause a lot of rework. And being able to walk this job site and in real time or near real time, be able to see what's being built as opposed to what should be built is incredibly exciting and powerful. So that model-driven world for me is coming really soon. There's already Trimble, for example, is doing some really great things in this space. Boston Dynamics is working in this space with their robots and things like that. So I'm excited about that. That is going to unlock really a extraordinary revolution of change in our business. Yeah, that's the biggest one for me. Everybody talks about Gen AI, and I love Gen AI, don't get me wrong. But for me, that computer vision and augmented reality is fantastic.
That makes sense. Well, I want to also ask you, Dolores, as somebody who's been an executive across multiple scaled organizations, I mentioned CRH in addition to Hensel Phelps, you were at Dell for a healthy tenure as well, and now a CIO multiple times over. As you reflect upon the heights that you've reached, what have been some of the difference makers along the way on that journey?
The difference makers. The difference makers in terms of people, process.
Yeah, like what are some of the secrets
technology?
to your success? What would you recommend to somebody who's 2 or 3, or even like at the beginning, I was going to say 2 or 3 steps below you, but maybe even like all the way at the lowest rungs, who might wish to have a career that looks a little bit like yours? What advice would you provide them based on what's worked well for you?
So the first thing is have great people, like great people around you, and really listen, right? Listen and learn from those great people. Have diverse teams. I am really blessed that I have worked with phenomenal people in the past, and they've really added a ton of wisdom. And when they share their wisdom, whether it hurts at the moment and you don't really like the feedback, I remember some of the first feedback, I was just talking about it, that I got at a management role many, many years ago. That stays with you. Those people impact you. They really do. And it's critical. And I love it. And I think it's amazing. The other thing that I would say is stay focused on the business. Don't get distracted. Don't get distracted by the technology or the shiny objects. Don't get distracted by a process or something. Stay focused on the business value, because at its heart, that's our role, right? Our role is to serve. So the more you understand the drivers of the business and the business strategy and the vision, the more you connect with those leaders, the better. The last thing I would say, and this is a new perceived business truth that I really challenged myself with this year and last year, I had a perception that I didn't want to bother people, right? Well, I don't really want to bother that person and just have a conversation about things I'm thinking about that may or may not be in line or on track with what they're thinking about, right? I don't want to. I really challenged that. And what I have found is not only is it a wealth of opportunity for you to learn from those people that you do want to knock on their door and go and sit down, but they appreciate your perspective, right? Your perspective is different than what they hear every day. And so it really is this great relationship that you can have. And so have the courage to knock on the door and get in and sit down and have a conversation. That has been really helpful. Yeah.
Great advice. Thank you for sharing that. Lastly, I wanted to ask you if there's anything you've been reading or watching or listening to that you would particularly recommend to your peer group. Anything that immediately comes to mind by chance?
So I'll save the third one for last, but The Singularity is Nearer. You may agree with Kurzweil, you may not, but the knowledge that he has in that book, right? The data that he provides are really good data points that you really should consider and think about, especially if you're thinking about long-term strategy. If you're thinking out 10 or 15 years, pick up his book, right? And pay attention to the data that he has. I'm a big data person. The second one I just picked up that was given to me is by a gentleman by the name of KP Reddy. And it's really about creating a space for your enterprise to be ready to take on AI. And how do you ensure that not only you have the critical skills, but your organization has the critical skills to take that on. So I've just started that book, and I've also picked up your book, So the so what of the aligning your strategy with the business strategy, I couldn't agree with more. And your tactical ways of going, ensuring that you have done that properly, I think are really critical. So I enjoyed that too. And that really is an honest plug. After we spoke before, I did pick that up, and
Very kind.
it's sitting by my bedside. So you're my current read.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it, Dolores. And thank you for the other suggestions also. Could you name, just for those who don't have the visuals, give the title of the second book you mentioned that's in front of you?
It's called Creating the Intangible Enterprise by KP Reddy.
Excellent. Excellent. Very good.
And the tagline is the critical skills required to thrive in an AI-driven world.
Excellent. Good recommendation. Well, Dolores, thank you so much for making time for me today. Thank you for sharing some of the insights from the remarkable transformation you've been leading within your organization, and some insights also into what's to come as well. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure.